Captain Jake Morrison stood at the viewing window of the UES horizon, watching the massive alien space station grow larger as his ship approached. The station was unlike anything humans had ever built. It stretched for miles in every direction, its blue crystalline surface catching the light of 3 different suns. This was Nexus Prime, the capital of the Zeltharian Empire, and Jake was about to make history as the first human to set foot inside. "Captain, we're receiving docking instructions," said Lieutenant Amy Foster from her position at the communications console. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and nervousness that Jake felt in his own chest. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Take us in slowly. We don't want to make any mistakes on our first day," Jake replied, straightening his formal diplomatic uniform. "Today would determine whether humanity would find friends or enemies among the stars. It had been 6 months since humans had achieved faster-than-light travel. The breakthrough had come suddenly, almost by accident, when Dr. Richard Hayes had been working on quantum field manipulation. One moment he was running tests in his laboratory, the next moment he had opened a doorway to another star system. Within weeks, human ships were exploring nearby systems, and within months they had encountered the Zeltharian Empire. The Zeltharians were tall, elegant beings with blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. They had crystalline implants embedded in their foreheads that glowed softly when they spoke. Their ships were works of art, curved and graceful, nothing like the angular, practical designs humans preferred. When they had first made contact, they had seemed curious about humanity, but also somewhat dismissive. "Docking complete, Captain," announced Sergeant Nick Parker from the engineering station. "All systems are stable. The artificial gravity on the station matches Earth normal, so we won't need environmental suits." Jake nodded and turned to his senior officers. Dr. Lisa Grant, the mission's chief archaeologist, was checking her tablet one final time. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent years studying ancient civilizations on Earth. Commander Ryan Brooks, their military advisor, stood at attention near the airlock. His job was to protect the diplomatic mission and observe Zeltharian military capabilities. "Remember, everyone," Jake said, addressing his team, "we're here to learn and to make friends. The Zeltharians claim to have ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They know things about space travel and alien civilizations that we can't even imagine. Let's show them that humans can be valuable allies." The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Jake stepped into the alien station. The corridors were wide and high, clearly designed for beings taller than humans. The walls were made of the same blue crystalline material as the station's exterior, and they seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. The air smelled different, cleaner somehow, with a hint of something that reminded Jake of ocean spray. A group of Zeltharians was waiting for them. Their leader was a tall female with intricate silver patterns carved into her crystalline implant. She wore flowing robes that seemed to change color as she moved. "Welcome, humans, to Nexus Prime," she said in perfect English, though her voice had a musical quality that no human voice could match. "I am High Chancellor Vexthara, Supreme Ruler of the Zeltharian Empire. You have traveled far from your small world to reach us." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly as his diplomatic training had taught him. "High Chancellor, I'm Captain Jake Morrison, representing the United Earth Government. We're honored to meet you and grateful for your invitation." Vexthara's expression remained neutral, but Jake noticed that her crystalline implant pulsed slightly brighter. "Follow me, Captain Morrison. We have much to discuss about your people's place in the galactic order." As they walked through the station, Jake was amazed by its scale and beauty. The corridors were filled with aliens of dozens of different species, all going about their business with the casual efficiency of a well-organized society. There were beings with 6 arms and fur-covered faces, others that looked like walking crystals, and some that appeared to be made of living metal. "Your empire is incredibly diverse," Jake observed, trying to make conversation. "The Zeltharian Empire spans over 10,000 star systems," Vexthara replied with obvious pride. "We have guided lesser species to civilization for 50 millennia. It is our burden and our honor to maintain order among the stars." Dr. Grant, who had been quietly observing everything around them, spoke up. 50,000 years is remarkable. Your people must have incredible historical records. I would love to study them. For the first time, Vixthara's expression shifted slightly. Our history is well documented, human. We are the first kingdom of the stars, the original architects of galactic civilization. All other species, including yours, are children compared to us. They entered a vast chamber with a domed ceiling that showed a real-time view of the galaxy. Thousands of stars twinkled in the darkness, with bright lines connecting them to show the trade routes and communication networks of the Zeltharian Empire. "This is our throne room," Vexthara announced. "From here, we govern the galaxy. And this is where we will decide what role your species will play in our empire." The word empire made Commander Brooks tense slightly, but he remained silent. Jake noticed the reaction and made a mental note to discuss it later. Vexthara took her place on a throne that seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal. Other Zeltharian officials arranged themselves around her, their implants glowing in synchronized patterns that Jake guessed was some form of communication. "Humans," Vexthara began, her voice echoing in the vast chamber. "You have achieved faster-than-light travel remarkably quickly for such a young species. This shows promise. However, you must understand that space is not empty. The galaxy has been claimed, organized, and civilized by the Zeltharian Empire for 50,000 years. She gestured to the star map above them. We have explored every system, cataloged every world, and brought order to chaos. When primitive species like yours develop space travel, they often make dangerous mistakes. They disturb ancient sites, anger established powers, or accidentally trigger old weapons. This is why we maintain control." Jake felt a flash of anger at being called primitive, but he kept his expression neutral. "High Chancellor, we come in peace. We're not looking to disturb anything or challenge anyone's authority. We simply want to learn and perhaps trade." "Good," Vexthara replied. "Then you will be pleased to know that we are prepared to offer humanity junior membership in our empire. You will be protected by our fleets, guided by our wisdom, and given access to safe trade routes. In return, you will acknowledge Zeltharian authority and contribute resources to the common good." The terms sounded reasonable on the surface, but Jake could hear the underlying message. Humanity would be treated as a client state, not an equal partner. They would have no real voice in galactic affairs. Dr. Grunt stepped forward. "High Chancellor, I'm curious about the archaeological evidence for your 50,000-year history. Surely there must be ruins, artifacts, or other physical proof of such an ancient civilization?" Vexthara's implant pulsed brighter, and Jake sensed annoyance. "Human, your species has barely learned to leave its homeworld. You cannot possibly understand the complexity of galactic archaeology. Our records are complete and accurate." "I'm sure they are," Dr. Grant replied politely. "But as an archaeologist, I'm trained to examine physical evidence. Different civilizations leave different traces. Building techniques, material choices, artistic styles, they all tell stories about who built what and when." Several Zeltharian officials began speaking among themselves in their own language, their implants flashing rapidly. Jake couldn't understand the words, but their tones suggested disagreement or concern. "Dr. Grant," Vexthara said firmly, "your human understanding of galactic history is naturally limited. You have been in space for less than one of your years. We have been among the stars for 50,000. Perhaps it would be better if you focused on learning rather than questioning." The rebuke was polite but clear. Dr. Grant nodded and stepped back, but Jake could see that she wasn't satisfied. Her scientific mind was clearly working on something. Commander Brooks had been quietly observing the Zeltharian technology throughout the meeting. Their ships, their station, even their clothing, everything was incredibly advanced. But as he looked more closely, he began to notice something odd. The technology seemed to be built on older foundations. The station's structure incorporated design elements that looked far more ancient than 50,000 years. It was as if the Zeltharians had built their civilization on top of something even older. The meeting continued for several hours, with Vexthara explaining the various rules and regulations that humanity would need to follow as junior members of the Empire. Jake listened carefully, asking questions and making notes, but part of his mind was troubled by what he had seen and heard. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Jake and his team were given quarters on the station and told they would have several days to explore and ask questions before returning to Earth with their answer. As they walked back through the corridors, Jake noticed something he had missed before. On the edge of the station's sensor displays, there was a blinking red dot marking some kind of anomaly. 3 months had passed since the first meeting at Nexus Prime. Captain Jake Morrison found himself back in space, but this time he was not alone. The U's Horizon flew alongside a sleek Zeltharian science vessel called the Star Whisper. Both ships were heading toward the mysterious derelict station that had appeared on the edge of Zeltharian space. After weeks of careful diplomatic work, Jake had convinced High Chancellor Vexthara to allow a joint expedition to investigate the ancient station. The Zeltharians were curious about it too, though they tried to hide their interest. They claimed it was just an old mining platform, but Jake could tell they were not entirely sure what it was. Dr. Lisa Grant sat in the ship's laboratory, studying every piece of data they had collected about the derelict station. The readings were strange. The station was huge, possibly 10 times larger than Nexus Prime. It was made of materials that did not match anything in the Zeltharian database. Most puzzling of all, it seemed to be much older than the Zeltharians claimed their civilization was. "Captain," Dr. Grant called out, "you need to see this." Jake walked over to her workstation, where multiple screens showed different views of the approaching station. Even from a distance, it was impressive. The structure was dark and angular, nothing like the flowing, artistic designs of Zeltharian architecture. It looked functional, built for a purpose rather than for beauty. "What am I looking at, Lisa?" Jake asked. "The construction style is completely different from anything we've seen," she explained, pointing to the detailed scans. "Look at these support beams. They're arranged in a pattern that actually makes more sense from an engineering perspective than the Zeltharian designs. And these materials, they're incredibly advanced. Some of these alloys are stronger than anything humans or Zeltharians use today." Commander Ryan Brooks joined them at the workstation. He had been studying the station's defensive systems, which appeared to be offline. "There's something else," he said. "The station's power systems are still partially active after all these years. Whatever built this thing, they knew how to make technology that lasts." Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communication console. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Star Whisper. The Zeltharian science team is ready to begin the investigation," Jake nodded. "Tell them we'll dock with the station in 1 hour. Make sure our environmental suits are ready." As the two ships approached the ancient station, Jake could see more details through the viewing windows. The station was not just old, it was ancient. The outer hull was scarred and pitted from millions of years of micrometeorite impacts. Sections of it were clearly damaged, but the overall structure remained intact. The docking bay they chose was large enough to hold both ships with room to spare. As Jake and his team prepared to board the station, they were joined by the Zeltharian science team. The leader was a younger Zeltharian named Kefanara, whose crystalline implant was smaller and less ornate than those of the Empire's leaders. "Captain Morrison," Kefanara said as they met in the docking bay, "I must admit, I am excited about this discovery. This station predates anything in our historical records. It may teach us much about the early history of our galaxy." Jake noticed that Kefanara seemed different from the other Zeltharians he had met. She appeared more curious and less arrogant. "We're excited too. Dr. Grant has been studying the initial scans, and she has some interesting theories." As they entered the station through an airlock, Jake was struck by how different it felt from Zeltharian structures. The corridors were wide, but not as tall, designed for beings closer to human height. The walls were made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light, giving the whole place a somber feeling. "The artificial gravity is still working," observed Sergeant Nick Parker, who was monitoring the station's systems. "It's set to about 90% of Earth normal." "That's interesting." Dr. Grant was already examining the walls with her portable scanner. "These symbols," she said, pointing to markings carved into the metal, "they're not in any Zaltharian language I've seen. But there's something familiar about them." Kithanara moved closer to look at the symbols. "They are not familiar to me either. Our oldest records contain nothing like this." The group moved deeper into the station, their footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. Most of the rooms they passed were empty, but they could see where equipment had once been installed. Whatever had happened here, the station had been deliberately emptied before being abandoned. After an hour of exploration, they reached what appeared to be the station's central command center. The room was vast, with a domed ceiling that had once displayed star charts. Banks of control consoles lined the walls, their screens dark and silent. "This is incredible," breathed Dr. Grant. "The level of technology here is amazing. These control systems are more advanced than anything we use today." Sergeant Parker approached one of the consoles and began examining it. "Captain, I think I might be able to get some of these systems working. The power conduits are still active and the computer cores seem to be intact." "Do it," Jake ordered. "But be careful. We don't know what kind of security systems this place might have." As Parker worked to restore power to the command center, Dr. Grant continued studying the symbols and markings throughout the room. Lieutenant Foster was recording everything with her cameras, creating a detailed record of their discoveries. "Got it," Parker announced as lights began to flicker on throughout the command center. One by one, the screens came to life, displaying text in the same unknown symbols they had seen throughout the station. "The computer systems are incredibly sophisticated," Parker continued. "They're using some kind of quantum processing that's way ahead of what we can do. But the interface is actually pretty intuitive." Dr. Grant moved to one of the active consoles and began trying to navigate the system. "The symbols are definitely not Zaltharian," she said. "But the mathematical principles behind them are familiar. Look at this," she pointed to a series of equations displayed on the screen. "These are gravitational calculations, but they're written in base 10 notation. That's the same number system humans use, not the base 12 system the Zaltharians prefer." Kithanara looked confused. "That is strange. All known civilizations in this region use base 12 mathematics. It is more efficient for space calculations." "Not all civilizations," Dr. Grant said quietly. "Humans use base 10 because we have 10 fingers. It's a natural choice for species that evolved from our kind of ancestors." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The implications of what Dr. Grant was suggesting were enormous. But before he could respond, Lieutenant Foster called out from across the room. "Captain, I found something. This console seems to be some kind of library system." Foster had managed to access what appeared to be the station's main database. The screen showed thousands of files organized in a way that seemed logical despite the alien symbols. "Can you access any of the files?" Jake asked. "I'm trying," Foster replied. "The system is asking for some kind of authorization, but it's also offering a guest access mode. Let me see if I can get into that." After a few minutes of work, Foster managed to access the guest files. The screen filled with star charts, technical diagrams, and what appeared to be historical records. But most shocking of all were the images. The files contained pictures of the beings who had built the station. They were humanoid in shape, with the same basic body structure as humans. Their faces were different, more refined and angular, but unmistakably similar to human features. "By the stars," whispered Kithanara. "They look like you. They look like humans." Dr. Grant was studying the images intently. "Not just similar to modern humans," she said. "These beings are what humans might look like after thousands of years of evolution and genetic engineering. They're like an advanced version of our species." Jake stared at the images, his mind reeling. The beings in the pictures were clearly more advanced than modern humans, but the resemblance was undeniable. They had the same basic facial structure, the same body proportions, even similar expressions. "How old are these records?" he asked. Parker had been working on dating the files. "Based on the quantum decay patterns in the data storage, these files are at least 100,000 years old, maybe more." "That's impossible," Kifanora said. "The Zaltharian Empire is the oldest civilization in the galaxy. We have ruled for 50,000 years. According to these records," Dr. Grant said, still studying the data, "this civilization was already ancient when your people were still developing agriculture. Look at these star charts. They show colonized systems throughout the galaxy, including many that are now part of the Zaltharian Empire. The implications were staggering. If these records were accurate, then an advanced human civilization had existed long before the Zaltharians had ever reached the stars. But if that was true, what had happened to them?" Foster had found more files, including what appeared to be technical manuals and scientific databases. "Captain, these technical specifications are incredible. They had faster-than-light travel, artificial gravity, energy weapons, and technologies we can't even understand." "There's more," Parker added. "I found a star map showing the locations of other installations like this one. There are dozens of them throughout the galaxy." Captain Jake Morrison stood in the command center of the U's Horizon, staring at the star map that Oracle had given them. The holographic display showed dozens of red dots scattered across the galaxy, each marking the location of an ancient human installation. For the past 2 weeks, Jake had been making a difficult decision, and now he had finally made up his mind. "We can't tell the Zaltharians about this yet," he said to his senior officers. "If we're right about what we found, it could destroy their entire civilization. We need to know more before we do anything." Dr. Lisa Grant nodded in agreement. "Oracle gave us the locations of 12 more installations. If we can investigate them quietly, we might be able to understand what really happened to the Terran Imperium." Commander Ryan Brooks looked concerned. "Captain, we're talking about operating in secret inside Zaltharian space. If they catch us, it could mean war between our species." "I know the risks," Jake replied, "but we have to know the truth. The Oracle said something was coming back, something that forced the Terran Imperium to destroy itself. If that threat is real, we need to be prepared." Jake had decided to split his team. Dr. Grant would lead the archaeological expeditions to the ancient sites, while Commander Brooks would handle security and logistics. Lieutenant Amy Foster would work on translating the ancient records, and Sergeant Nick Parker would study the advanced technology they were finding. Their first stop was a dead system, called Kepler 442, where the star had burned out millions of years ago. According to Oracle's star map, there had once been a major installation on the fourth planet. As the horizon approached the dark world, they could see the faint outline of massive structures on the surface. "This place is incredible," Dr. Grant said as they studied the planet from orbit. "The buildings are huge, much larger than anything we saw on the station. This must have been a major city. The planet's surface was frozen and lifeless, but the ancient structures were perfectly preserved by the cold." As they landed near the largest building complex, Jake was amazed by the scale of what they were seeing. The buildings stretched for miles in every direction, their dark surfaces unmarked by time. "These structures are built into the planet's crust," observed Parker as he scanned the area. "They go down at least 1,000 feet? This wasn't just a city, it was a fortress." The team entered the complex through a massive doorway that had been sealed for thousands of years. As they walked through the corridors, their footsteps echoed in the emptiness. The walls were covered with murals showing scenes of daily life in the Terran Imperium. "Look at this," Dr. Grant said, pointing to one of the murals. "It shows humans living alongside other species. They weren't conquerors, they were partners with alien civilizations." The mural showed humans and various alien species working together on what appeared to be massive construction projects. There were beings that looked like early versions of the Zaltharians, as well as species that Jake had never seen before. The Terran Imperium was a multi-species civilization, Dr. Grant continued. They brought other races into space and helped them develop their own technologies. As they explored deeper into the complex, they found what appeared to be a vast library. The walls were lined with the same crystalline data storage devices they had seen on the station. But here there were thousands of them, organized in careful rows. "This is incredible," breathed Foster as she examined the data crystals. "This is the history of the entire galaxy. Records of every species, every world, every major event for hundreds of thousands of years." Parker had found the main computer system and was working to bring it online. "The power systems are still active," he said. "These people really knew how to build things that last." As the computer systems came online, they were greeted by another Oracle unit. This one appeared as a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Welcome to the archive," she said. "I am Oracle 7, keeper of the historical records. You have many questions, and I have many answers." Jake stepped forward. "Oracle 7, we need to know what happened to the Terran Imperium. Why did they disappear?" "The Terran Imperium did not disappear," Oracle 7 replied. "It was destroyed deliberately by its own people to save the galaxy from a terrible threat." The Oracle began to show them holographic records of the ancient past. The Terran Imperium had been a golden age for the galaxy. Humans had developed incredible technologies and had used them to help other species reach the stars. For over 100,000 years, peace and prosperity had reigned. But then something changed, Oracle 7 continued. Long-range sensors detected ships approaching from outside the galaxy. Ships that belonged to something called the Void Collective. The hologram showed images of dark, twisted vessels that seemed to absorb light. They were unlike anything Jake had ever seen, more like living creatures than machines. "The Void Collective was not from our reality," Oracle 7 explained. "They came from a dimension where life and matter behaved differently. They consumed entire civilizations, not just for resources, but for the knowledge and experiences of living beings." Dr. Grant was studying the images with fascination and horror. "They were feeding on consciousness itself," she said. "That's why they were so dangerous. The Terran Imperium fought them for 1,000 years, Oracle 7 continued. But the Void learned from every battle. They adapted to our weapons, copied our strategies, and turned our own technologies against us. The hologram showed massive space battles between human fleets and the dark ships of the Void. At first, the humans seemed to be winning, but gradually the tide turned. The Void ships became more numerous and more dangerous. The Imperium's leaders realized that the Void was not just taking our worlds, Oracle 7 said. They were learning from us. Every captured human, every conquered world made them stronger and more intelligent. Jake felt a chill as he understood the implications. So, the Imperium decided to destroy itself to prevent the Void from learning too much. Yes, Oracle 7 confirmed. The greatest sacrifice in galactic history. The Terran Imperium deliberately collapsed its own civilization, destroyed its fleets, and scattered its people. But first they did something else. The hologram showed humans evacuating millions of people from across the galaxy. Ships loaded with refugees headed toward a small, unremarkable star system on the edge of the galaxy. They took representatives from every species they had helped, Oracle 7 explained. But the largest group was humans themselves. They were brought to a world called Earth, where their memories were carefully adjusted to remove all knowledge of the Imperium. Foster looked shocked. They erased their own history from their minds? It was the only way to ensure that the Void could never extract the information, Oracle 7 replied. The survivors were given new identities, new histories, and left to rebuild their civilizations naturally. But what about the Zeltharians? Dr. Grant asked. How did they end up ruling the galaxy? The Zeltharians were one of the younger species that the Imperium had helped, Oracle 7 explained. When the Imperium fell, they found many abandoned installations and assumed they were ancient Zeltharian ruins. They built their empire on the foundations of human civilization without ever realizing it. The pieces were starting to fit together. The Zeltharians had not lied about their history, they had simply misunderstood it. They had found the ruins of the Terran Imperium and assumed they were their own ancestors' work. The Oracle units were left behind as guardians, Oracle 7 continued. We were programmed to wait for the day when humanity would return to the stars. When that day came, we would help them remember their true heritage. Commander Brooks had been listening quietly, but now he spoke up. You said the Void was defeated. Are they still a threat? Oracle 7's expression became troubled. The Void Collective was not destroyed. They were driven back to their own dimension, but the barriers between realities are not permanent. Our sensors have detected signs that they may be returning. Jake felt his heart sink. How long do we have? Unknown, Oracle 7 replied. The signs are subtle, but they are growing stronger. Dimensional rifts, strange energy readings, reports of missing ships in deep space. The Void may already be testing our defenses. Dr. Grant was studying the historical records. Oracle 7, these files show that the Terran Imperium had defensive systems. Are they still active? Some of them are, Oracle 7 confirmed. But they require activation codes that can only be provided by representatives of the original Imperium. Species. The systems were designed to prevent any one species from controlling them. How many species would we need? Dick asked. At least 12 of the original Imperium members, Oracle 7 replied, including humans and Zeltharians. The implications were staggering. If the Void Collective was returning, humanity would need to work with the Zeltharians and other species to activate the ancient defenses. But the Zeltharians did not even know the truth about their own history. There's something else, Oracle 7 said. The defensive systems are not just weapons. They are designed to seal the barriers between dimensions permanently. But activating them requires a tremendous sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? Commander, Brooks asked. The activation process requires the willing cooperation of representatives from all the original species, Oracle 7 explained. They must link their consciousness directly. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the Grand Throne Room of Nexus Prime, facing High Chancellor Vexthara and the assembled leaders of the Zeltharian Empire. In his hands he held a data crystal containing proof that would shake the foundation of everything the Zeltharians believed about themselves. Behind him, Dr. Lisa Grant and Commander Ryan Brooks waited nervously, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the future of the galaxy. High Chancellor, Jake began, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to reveal. We have made a discovery that changes everything we thought we knew about galactic history. Vexthara's crystalline implant pulsed with mild interest. Captain Morrison, I hope you have not called this emergency session to share more of your archaeologist theories. We have already explained that human understanding of galactic history is limited. With respect, High Chancellor, this is not theory. This is fact supported by physical evidence and historical records that are older than your empire. Jake activated the holographic projector, and the image of Oracle 7 appeared in the center of the throne room. Several Zeltharian officials stepped backward in surprise. The Oracle's human appearance was unmistakable, and the technology that projected her was clearly more advanced than anything currently in use. I am Oracle 7. Keeper of the historical archives of the Terran Imperium, the hologram announced. I bring greetings to the descendants of those we once guided to the stars. The throne room erupted in confused chatter. Zeltharian officials spoke rapidly among themselves, their implants flashing in complex patterns. Vexthara raised her hand for silence, but Jake could see that she was shaken. This is some kind of trick, declared General Zeftok, the Empire's military commander. He was a large Zeltharian with battle scars across his arms and a fierce expression. Humans are trying to deceive us with false projections. Dr. Grant stepped forward. General, we can prove everything we're about to tell you. We have physical evidence from 12 different sites across the galaxy, archaeological proof that cannot be faked. Oracle 7 began to display the historical records. Images of the ancient Terran Imperium filled the air above them. The Zeltharian leaders watched in stunned silence as they saw their own ancestors working alongside humans, learning from them, being guided by them. "This is impossible," whispered Kethanara, the young scientist who had joined the expedition to the ancient station. "Our records clearly show that we developed space travel independently." "Your records show what your ancestors believed to be true," Oracle 7 explained gently. "When the Terran Imperium fell, many species were left with incomplete knowledge. You found our installations and assumed they were built by your own people?" High Chancellor Vexthara stared at the images, her face showing a mixture of disbelief and growing horror. "You are claiming that the Zeltharian Empire is built on a lie?" "Not a lie," Jake said carefully. "A misunderstanding. Your people achieved greatness, but they did it with help from the Terran Imperium. There's no shame in that." But General Zeftok was not convinced. "Even if this is true, what does it matter? The Zeltharian Empire has ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. We have brought order and peace to countless worlds. Our achievements are real, regardless of what came before." Oracle 7's expression became serious. "General, it matters because the threat that destroyed the Terran Imperium is returning. The Void Collective stirs again, and only by working together can the galaxy hope to survive." The hologram began showing images of the dark ships that Jake had seen in the archives. The Zeltharian leaders watched in horrified fascination as Oracle 7 explained the nature of the Void Collective and the sacrifice that the Terran Imperium had made to stop them. "The defensive systems left behind by the Imperium can protect the galaxy," Oracle 7 continued. "But they require activation codes from representatives of 12 different species. The systems were designed to prevent any one race from controlling them." Vexthara was struggling to process everything she was hearing. "You are asking us to abandon 50,000 years of history based on the word of a human computer program." "We're asking you to look at the evidence," Dr. Grant replied. She activated her own projector, showing detailed scans of the ancient installations. "The archaeological proof is overwhelming. The construction techniques, the materials, the technological signatures, they all point to a single conclusion." Commander Brooks added, "High Chancellor, we're not trying to diminish Zeltharian achievements. We're trying to save everyone. If the Void Collective returns and we're not prepared, every species in the galaxy will be destroyed." But the revelation was having different effects on different Zeltharians. Kethanara and several younger scientists seemed fascinated by the new information, asking detailed questions about the ancient technology. However, General Zeftok and the older military leaders appeared angry and defensive. "This is an attack on our very identity," Zeftok declared. "Humans come to us claiming to be our superiors, our teachers, our saviors. They want us to bow down to them just as our ancestors supposedly did. That's not what we want," Jake protested. "We want to work together as equals." "Equals?" Zeftok's voice rose. "You claim your ancestors created our civilization. You claim we owe everything to humans. How is that equality?" The argument continued for hours. Some Zeltharian leaders were beginning to accept the evidence, but others refused to even consider it. The Empire was starting to split along ideological lines. High Chancellor Vexthara finally called for a recess. As the various officials left the throne room, she approached Jake privately. "Captain Morrison," she said quietly, "what you have shown us today will destroy our society. Our entire government, our religion, our culture, everything is based on the belief that we are the first kingdom. If that is false, then who are we?" Jake felt sympathy for her struggle. "You are who you have always been. The Terran Imperium helped your ancestors reach the stars, but what you built afterward was your own achievement. The Zeltharian Empire is real and it has done great things. But it is built on a foundation of ignorance," Vexthara replied. "How can we continue to rule when our entire claim to authority is based on a misunderstanding?" Before Jake could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Emergency lights flashed and automated voices announced a security alert. "Commander." Brooks activated his communicator. "Horizon, what's your status?" Lieutenant Amy Foster's voice crackled through the device. Commander, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Zeltharian space. It looks like someone is mobilizing for war. Jake and Vexthara rushed to the command center, where the tactical displays showed the disposition of forces throughout the Empire. General Zeftok was already there, directing the movement of military units. General, what are you doing? Vexthara demanded. Protecting the Empire from this human deception, Zeftok replied. I have ordered all loyal forces to secure the ancient installations that the humans claim to have found. We cannot allow them to spread these lies any further. Those aren't lies, they're historical facts, Dr. Grant protested. Facts that threaten everything we stand for, Zeftok shot back. High Chancellor, surely you can see that this is all part of a human plot to conquer us. They show us ancient ruins and claim they belong to their ancestors. Next, they will demand that we submit to human authority. Kethanara, who had been quietly studying the data, suddenly spoke up. General, I have analyzed the evidence. The archaeological proof is genuine. These installations are definitely older than our civilization. Then you have been deceived as well, Zeftok replied. I will not allow the Empire to be destroyed by human trickery. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. Jake could see that Zeltharian society was fracturing along the lines of those who accepted the evidence and those who rejected it. Some systems were declaring independence from the central government, while others were rallying to support General Zeftok's hardline position. High Chancellor, Jake said urgently, we need to focus on the real threat. The Void Collective is returning. If we spend our time fighting each other, we won't be ready to face them. But Vexthara was struggling with her own crisis of faith. Captain, even if everything you say is true, how can I ask my people to work with humans? You have just destroyed everything we believed about ourselves. The crisis deepened when long-range sensors detected anomalous readings from the edge of the galaxy. Dr. Grant analyzed the data and her face went pale. Jake, she said quietly, these energy signatures match what Oracle 7 showed us about the Void Collective. Something is definitely stirring out there. Commander Brooks was monitoring military communications throughout the Empire. Captain, it's getting worse. 3 entire star systems have declared independence. General Zeftok is claiming that the High Chancellor has been corrupted by human influence. Jake realized that the galaxy was facing a perfect storm. Just when they needed unity to face the returning Void Collective, the revelation about galactic history was tearing the Zeltharian Empire apart. We have to stop this civil war before it really starts, he told his team. If the Zeltharians destroy themselves fighting each other, the Void won't need to do anything. But stopping the war would not be easy. General Zeftok had significant support among the military. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the tactical display with growing concern. The galactic civil war had been raging for 3 weeks, and the situation was getting worse every day. General Zeftok's forces controlled almost half of the Zeltharian Empire, while the progressive faction led by Kethanara held the other half. Meanwhile, High Chancellor Vexthara remained trapped on Nexus Prime, unable to unite her fractured people. Captain, Dr. Lisa Grant called from her station. Oracle 7 is reporting more dimensional anomalies. The readings are getting stronger every day. Jake nodded grimly. The Void Collective was definitely returning, but the galaxy was too busy fighting itself to prepare for the real threat. He had to find a way to end the Civil War before it was too late. Lieutenant Amy Foster looked up from her communications. Console. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Kethanara. She says they've located one of the ancient defensive installations and they're ready to attempt activation. Good, Jake replied. Maybe if we can prove that the technology works, it will convince more people to join us. The installation was located on a remote world called Sigma 7, far from the main battle zones. As the horizon approached the planet, Jake could see that it was different from the archaeological sites they had visited before. This installation was clearly military in nature, with massive weapon arrays and shield generators built into the planet's surface. Kethanara, met them at the landing site with a small team of Zaltharian scientists and technicians. Her crystalline implant was dimmed with exhaustion, and Jake could see the stress of the Civil War in her eyes. "Captain Morrison," she said, "I hope this works. My people are destroying themselves, and I fear we may be too late to stop it." Dr. Grant was already scanning the installation with her equipment. "The power levels here are incredible. This isn't just a defensive system, it's a fortress designed to protect an entire star system." Sergeant Nick Parker had found the main control center and was working to bring the systems online. "The installation is responding to my commands, but it's asking for authorization codes from multiple species." Oracle 7's hologram appeared beside them. "This installation requires genetic samples and authorization from representatives of 12 species before it can be activated. The Terran Imperium designed these safeguards to prevent any single race from controlling the weapons. We have humans and Zaltharians," Jake said, counting on his fingers. "What about the other 10 species?" "Many of the original Imperium species still exist in the galaxy," Oracle 7 explained. "But they have evolved and changed over the millennia. The system will need to analyze their genetic patterns to confirm their lineage." Kethanara activated her communicator. "I have contacts among several species in this region. The Korthans, the Vecti, and the Crystalline Collective have all agreed to send representatives." As they waited for the other species to arrive, alarms suddenly began sounding throughout the installation. The defensive sensors had detected something approaching from deep space. "What is it?" Jake asked. Oracle 7's expression became grave. "Long-range sensors are detecting the approach of Void Collective scouts. They're still several light-years away, but they are definitely heading toward this galaxy." The implications were terrifying. The Void was returning sooner than anyone had expected, and the galaxy was completely unprepared. Commander Ryan Brooks was monitoring military communications from across the galaxy. "Captain, the fighting is intensifying. General Zeftok has launched a major offensive against the systems that support Kethanara. He's claiming that working with humans is treason against the Zaltharian people." Jake felt the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. The revelation about galactic history had been necessary, but it had also triggered a civil war that was weakening everyone's ability to resist the Void. Over the next several hours, representatives from various alien species began arriving at Sigma 7. The Korthans were tall, insect-like beings with multiple arms and compound eyes. The Vecti resembled living crystals that communicated through harmonic vibrations. The Crystalline Collective sent a being that looked like a walking gemstone. Each species brought their own piece of galactic history. As Oracle 7 analyzed their genetic patterns, she confirmed that they were indeed descendants of species that had once been part of the Terran Imperium. "It is remarkable," the Korthan representative said through a translation device. "Our oldest legends speak of the sky teachers who helped us reach the stars. We always assumed they were mythical beings. Our crystal songs remember the ancient ones who showed us how to travel between worlds," added the Vecti representative. "But we thought they were spiritual entities, not physical beings." Dr. Grant was fascinated by the diverse reactions. Each species incorporated the memory of the Terran Imperium into their own cultural mythology. They remembered the help they received, but they didn't understand that it came from an actual human civilization. As more representatives arrived, Jake began to feel hopeful. Despite the civil war raging among the Zaltharians, other species were willing to work together against the Void threat, but their progress was interrupted when General Zeftok's fleet arrived in the system. Dozens of Zaltharian warships dropped out of hyperspace and began moving toward the planet. "This is General Zeftok," came a broadcast from the lead ship. "You are ordered to surrender the human infiltrators and cease your illegal activation of ancient weapons. The Zaltharian Empire will not allow its security to be compromised by alien deception." Kethanara tried to reason with him. "General, the Void Collective is returning. We have proof. We must work together to activate the defenses. The only threat to the galaxy is human manipulation," Zeftok replied. I will not allow you to destroy our civilization with these lies. The situation became a standoff. Zeftak's ships surrounded the planet, but they hesitated to attack because several other species were also present. Starting a war with multiple alien civilizations would be catastrophic for the Zeltharian Empire. Jake realized that this was their chance. Oracle 7, how many more species do we need for the activation? We now have 8 species represented, Oracle 7 replied. We need 4 more. General Zeftak, Jake broadcast to the Zeltharian fleet, I'm going to show you something. I want you to scan the edge of the galaxy with your long-range sensors. Look for dimensional anomalies and energy signatures that don't match anything in your database. There was a long pause before Zeftak responded. I will not be distracted by more human tricks. It's not a trick, Jake insisted. Just look at the data. If I'm wrong, you can arrest all of us. Finally, Zeftak agreed to scan the galactic edge. The results were transmitted to all the ships in the system, and Jake could hear the shocked reactions from the Zeltharian crews. By the eternal stars, whispered one of Zeftak's officers. What are those things? The sensors showed dark shapes, moving between dimensions, slowly approaching the galaxy. They were massive, larger than entire star systems, and they radiated an energy that seemed to absorb light itself. Those are Void Collective Scouts, Oracle 7 explained. They are preparing the way for the main invasion force. Once they arrive, they will begin consuming entire worlds. The revelation hit Zeftak like a physical blow. Jake could hear the confusion and fear in his voice as he spoke to his officers. Everything he had believed about the threat to his empire was suddenly proven wrong. How long do we have? Zeftak asked quietly. Based on their current speed, perhaps 6 months, Oracle 7 replied. But once they established dimensional gateways, the main force could arrive much sooner. High Chancellor Vexthara's voice suddenly came through the communication system. General Zeftak, this is your Chancellor. I order you to stand down and cooperate with the human mission. The Empire's survival depends on it. Zeftak was struggling with everything he had learned. High Chancellor, if we work with the humans, we are admitting that our entire civilization is built on ignorance. No, Vexthara replied firmly. We are admitting that our civilization was built with help, and that we are strong enough to accept that truth. The Zeltharian Empire has achieved great things, regardless of how it began. Slowly, reluctantly, Zeftak agreed to cooperate. His ship stood down, and he came to the planet's surface to witness the activation attempt. With representatives from 12 species finally gathered, the defensive installation began its activation sequence. Each species had to provide genetic samples and speak authorization codes in their own language. The process was complex and required perfect coordination. The installation is accepting the authorization codes, Parker reported. Power levels are rising throughout the system. As the ancient technology came online, massive energy shields began forming around the entire star system. Weapon arrays that had been dormant for millennia powered up, their targeting systems scanning for dimensional rifts. It's working, Dr. Grant said in amazement. The defensive grid is becoming active. Oracle 7 smiled for the first time since they had met her. This installation will serve as a template for activating the others, but we must work quickly. The Void Collective will not wait for us to be ready. In the days that followed, the galactic civil war came to an end. Faced with an existential threat from outside their reality,